The old Mustang sat behind a small repair shop at the edge of town, covered in dust and fallen leaves. Its paint was faded, and one tire was half flat. Most people who passed by did not even notice it anymore. To them, it was just another piece of junk waiting to be taken away. The town itself was quiet and slow, the kind of place where everyone knew each other and nothing much ever changed. The shop belonged to a quiet man who worked alone most days. He was not rich. He did not even have a big sign. He just fixed cars for people who could not afford to go to the big places in the city. He showed up early, stayed late, and never complained. Many people trusted him because he did honest work. When something could be fixed cheaply, he said so. When it was too far gone, he did not lie. That Mustang was different. He never worked on it in front of others. It stayed in the back, almost hidden, like a secret. Some people asked him why he kept it. Others told him it was wasting space. He always gave a short answer. He said it was not for sale. Then he went back to work. One afternoon, a black luxury car rolled into town. It looked out of place, shiny and smooth on the rough road. It stopped in front of the repair shop. A tall man stepped out, wearing a clean suit and dark glasses. He was a CEO, a man who owned several large car companies. He was in town for a meeting nearby and had time to spare. He liked to look at small shops, to see how the other side lived. He walked into the repair shop, looking around. The place was simple. Tools were hung on the wall. The floor was stained with oil. A radio played softly in the corner. The mechanic looked up and nodded. The CEO asked if he could look around. The mechanic did not mind. The CEO walked outside, and his eyes landed on the Mustang. He smiled a little, the kind of smile people make when they think they know better. He walked closer to it, tapping the hood with his fingers. "This thing is still here?" he said. "I saw one like it years ago. Most of them are scrap now." Mechanic wiped his hands with a cloth. "It's not scrap," he said calmly. The CEO laughed. "Look at it. Paint is gone. Body is rusted. It hasn't moved in years. You could get a few hundred for it at best." The mechanic did not get angry. He just looked at the car. "It's not for sale." That only made the CEO more interested. He was used to buying things. If someone said no, he thought it meant they just wanted more money. "Everyone has a price," he said. "I could take it off your hands today." The mechanic shook his head. "Some things are not about money." The CEO raised an eyebrow. He had not heard that much in his life. He walked around the Mustang again, noticing the cracked windows, the old wheels, and the way weeds grew near the tires. To him, it looked dead. "You're holding on to a memory," the CEO said. "But memories don't fix engines." The mechanic stayed quiet. He did not explain. He did not need to. That car had a story, but it was not one he shared with just anyone. The CEO went back inside the shop. He looked at the mechanic, and then at the list of small jobs on the wall. Old trucks. Small cars. Nothing special. "You work too hard for too little," the CEO said. "You could make more if you sold things like that." Mechanic smiled a little. "I make enough." The CEO was not used to hearing that. He had spent his whole life trying to make more. More money, more deals, more power. Yet this man, in a small shop, seemed content. A local man walked by and saw the CEO standing near the Mustang. "You thinking of buying that thing?" he asked with a laugh. "Good luck." "That car's been sitting there forever." The CEO smiled. "Is it really that bad?" The local man nodded. "It's just an old piece of metal. He keeps it because it meant something to someone, but it's done." The mechanic heard this, but said nothing. He focused on a car he was fixing, tightening a bolt slowly, carefully. The CEO looked again at the Mustang. He could not understand why anyone would keep something so broken. Yet something about the way the mechanic refused to let it go made him wonder if there was more to it. "Tell you what," the CEO said. "Let me take a closer look." "Just for fun?" Mechanic hesitated, then nodded. "Go ahead." The CEO opened the hood. Inside, it looked cleaner than he expected. The parts were not new, but they were well cared for. He leaned in, surprised. It did not match the outside. "You work on this?" the CEO asked. "Yes," the mechanic replied. Why keep it hidden? The mechanic paused. Some things need time. The CEO closed the hood slowly. He felt something shift inside him. He still thought the car was worthless, but now he was not as sure. He pulled out his phone and checked the time. He had a meeting soon. "I'll be back," he said. "I want to see what you're really holding on to." The mechanic watched him leave. He looked at the Mustang, brushing a bit of dust off the hood. Soon, he whispered, the town went back to being quiet, but something had started. The CEO thought he had seen junk. The mechanic knew he had seen a piece of a story that was not finished yet. The morning sun shone weakly over the small town, casting a golden glow on the quiet streets. The old Mustang still sat in its place behind the repair shop, looking as forgotten as ever. Yet today, it seemed different. The mechanic moved around it with a careful touch, as if waking an old friend. He checked the tires, wiped the dust, and ran his hands along the hood. To most people, it was just a car. To him, it was a connection to someone he loved and missed every day. Years ago, that Mustang had belonged to his father. His father was not rich, but he had a gift. He could take something broken and make it run like new. The Mustang was his pride and joy. He had spent countless hours fixing it, tuning the engine, polishing the body, and dreaming of taking it out on long roads. But life had its own plans. His father had passed away unexpectedly, leaving the mechanic with the car and the memories attached to it. It was more than metal and wheels. It carried the laughter, lessons, and love of a man who had meant everything. The mechanic had tried to use it after his father's death, but it never felt right. Something was missing. He spent time learning every detail, studying the engine and keeping it alive. Over the years, he became a skilled mechanic, taking lessons from the Mustang itself. He learned patience, care, and how small details could make a huge difference. The car was his teacher in his memory. That day, he was not alone. The CEO had returned, driving the same black luxury car into town. He parked outside the shop, eyes scanning the Mustang again. The car still looked old, but this time he paused longer. There was something about the quiet confidence of the mechanic, the way he treated the Mustang, that made the CEO curious. He stepped out of his car and walked slowly toward the repair shop, his shoes crunching on the gravel. The mechanic looked up and nodded, not surprised to see the CEO again. "Back so soon?" he asked. The CEO smiled, but it was a small, thoughtful smile. "I want to understand it. This car. It's not what it seems." The mechanic gestured to the Mustang. "It's not about what it seems. It's about what it is." The CEO leaned against the car, studying the faded paint and the scratches along the side. He noticed the small details, the hand-polished rims, the careful repairs that no one else would bother with, the way the engine cover fit perfectly despite the years. He realized that this car had been loved in a way most machines never were. "Why keep it?" the CEO asked. "It looks broken to most people. Even you sometimes could have sold it." The mechanic wiped his hands on a rag and looked at the Mustang as if it could answer for itself. "Because it matters. It's not about money or value others see. It's about respect for what was built with care. My father built this. I can't just let it go." The CEO nodded slowly. He had spent his life buying things, making deals, and discarding what no longer served him. He had never thought about a machine this way. He had never met someone who could see life in a car. The mechanic opened the shop door and gestured for the CEO to follow him inside. He wanted to show him something. The interior of the shop smelled of oil and gasoline, mixed with the faint scent of old leather. On a shelf, parts of engines, tools, and old photographs were neatly arranged. He picked up a faded picture of a younger man with bright eyes, smiling beside a shiny Mustang. The CEO looked at it. "That's him," the mechanic said softly. "My father. He taught me everything about cars. About life, really. That Mustang was his dream. I try to honor it." The CEO studied the photograph, feeling a strange warmth he did not expect. It was just a picture, yet he could sense the love and dedication behind it. He realized that the mechanic had inherited more than skills. He had inherited a legacy. The mechanic took the CEO back outside. "The engine is special," he said. "It's not just a car. It's tuned in a way most people don't understand. My father put hours into every part. I've maintained it. I know it's capable of more than it looks." The CEO looked at the Mustang, still skeptical. "It's old. Engines wear out. Parts fail. It's still junk to me." The mechanic smiled faintly. "Look at it closely and you'll see. Sometimes what looks broken can still shine if you care for it." The CEO stayed silent. He did not want to admit he might be wrong, yet he could not ignore the sense of history, love, and skill surrounding the car. He watched the mechanic move around the Mustang with confidence, checking small details, tapping parts lightly, listening to the engine through his hands. He began asking questions. What makes this engine different? How can it still be strong after all these years? The mechanic explained slowly in simple words about the special tuning. The parts were placed by hand, and the patience it required. "It's not about the brand or the price," he said. "It's about care and knowledge. My father taught me that. That's why this car runs when others fail." The CEO listened, starting to understand. He had spent his life judging by appearances and cost. Here was a car that looked abandoned, but had value far beyond its surface. It was a lesson he had never expected to learn in a small town from a humble mechanic. People passing by stopped to watch. They knew the CEO was in town, and they were curious. "That car is nothing," one neighbor whispered. "It's just old metal." But the CEO no longer thought that. He felt something stirring inside him. He felt respect, curiosity, and a strange excitement. He wanted to see it in action. He wanted to know if the mechanic was right. The mechanic noticed the change in the CEO's eyes. He had seen it before in others when they realized that some things could not be judged by surface alone. "If you want to see what it can do, you need to listen first," he said. The CEO nodded. He was ready to listen. He had learned that appearances could deceive. He was learning that day that value was not always obvious. That Mustang, old and worn, had a story that demanded respect. The mechanic opened the driver's door carefully, brushing his hands along the worn leather. "It's ready when you are," he said. The CEO looked at the car again, not with doubt, but with curiosity. He had no idea what would happen next. He only knew that he had underestimated the Mustang, and possibly underestimated the quiet man standing beside it. That day, the CEO stayed longer than he expected. He asked more questions about engines, about care, and about the love a man could pour into a machine. He realized that the mechanic's father had left something rare behind. A car, yes, but also a lesson in patience, pride, and respect. By the time the sun began to dip behind the trees, the CEO had learned more about life and work than in years of boardrooms. He looked at the Mustang one last time before leaving. The car seemed to glow in the evening light. He could almost feel the heartbeat of the man who had built it, and the quiet strength of the man who now cared for it. The mechanic returned to his work, tightening bolts and checking engines. The Mustang waited silently, patient and proud. Outside, the town returned to its quiet rhythm. Inside, a lesson had been taught without words. A story had begun to unfold. The CEO knew he would come back. He did not yet know why, but he felt a pull he could not explain. Something about the Mustang, about the mechanic, was changing him. And the Mustang, old and dusty, waited for the right moment to prove that it was far from junk. It had a story to tell, and soon everyone would hear it. The morning was quiet, almost too quiet. The small town had its usual calm, but behind the repair shop there was a tension in the air. The old Mustang, covered in dust and faded paint, seemed almost alive, waiting. The mechanic moved around it slowly, checking every detail, running his fingers along the worn edges. Today was the day the CEO would see what the car could really do. The CEO had returned the night before, leaving the shop with more questions than answers. He had spent hours thinking about the Mustang, the man who cared for it, and the story behind it. He could not shake the feeling that he had misjudged something important. The Mustang looked old and broken, but the care it had received, the history it carried, made him think twice. As the CEO pulled into the shop's gravel driveway, he noticed neighbors gathering. Word had spread that the big man from the city had returned. Everyone wondered what he was doing there again. He stepped out of his car, this time with a mix of curiosity and challenge in his eyes. He wanted to see if the mechanic's claims about the Mustang were true. The mechanic greeted him calmly, as if he had expected him. "You're back," he said. "I want to see it," the CEO replied. "I want to know if this car can really run the way you say it does." The mechanic nodded. "Then you'll need to watch carefully and listen closely. It's not about speed or shine. It's about life." The CEO followed him to the Mustang, noticing the quiet strength in the way the mechanic handled it. The car was still dusty, still worn, but there was a sense of pride in the way the mechanic looked at it. He opened the hood carefully, showing the engine. The parts gleamed under the light, polished and cared for. Even though it was old, it looked alive. "This is my father's work," the mechanic said softly. "I've maintained it, kept it running as he wanted. It's more than metal. It's a legacy." The CEO leaned in, examining the engine. He could see the care, the custom parts, the effort, yet he was still skeptical. "It looks impressive, I'll give you that," he said. "But a few good parts don't make a car worth much if it's old and rusty. Let's see it start." The mechanic smiled faintly, understanding the challenge. He walked to the driver's seat, put the key in the ignition, and paused. The CEO watched closely, expecting a cough or sputter, maybe even silence. Everyone around them held their breath. When the mechanic turned the key, there was a moment of stillness. Then, a deep, powerful roar erupted from the engine. It was not loud in a painful way, but strong, smooth, confident. The sound vibrated through the air, turning heads and making people step back. The Mustang shook slightly, alive again after years of waiting. The CEO's eyes widened. He had never heard anything like it. He had driven hundreds of cars, tested dozens of engines, yet nothing sounded like this. It was more than noise. It was a statement, a proof of life. The engine ran smoothly, every part moving in perfect harmony. The tires, the gears, even the body of the car seemed to respond to the power inside. Neighbors gasped. Some whispered to each other, "I told you it wasn't just junk. Did you hear that? It's alive." The CEO stepped back, his pride and skepticism colliding with awe. He could not hide his surprise. This is incredible," he said, almost to himself. The mechanic closed the hood slowly, letting the engine run for a few moments. "It's been cared for," he said. "It's never been about appearance. It's about respect, patience, and understanding. My father built this car to last. I've kept it that way." The CEO walked around the car, listening to the engine hum. He could feel the energy, the precision, the dedication behind every piece. It was not just a car. It was a story, a life lived through steel, rubber, and sweat. He realized how wrong he had been to judge it at first glance. "You were right," he admitted quietly. "I thought it was junk. I thought it was worthless. But I was wrong." The mechanic did not smile. He simply nodded. "Sometimes what looks broken can still hold more value than anything shiny and new." The CEO asked if he could sit inside to feel it. The mechanic agreed, and he lowered himself into the worn leather seat. The interior smelled faintly of oil, leather, and memories. He turned the key again, and the engine purred under him. The Mustang did not just run. It breathed, it spoke. The CEO felt it under him, a connection he had never felt with any machine before. The mechanic watched quietly, satisfied. He had not needed to prove anything to the CEO, yet the moment felt right. The Mustang had spoken for itself. Neighbors continued to gather, some taking photos, others simply staring in amazement. They had never seen the CEO react like this. He, a man used to power and control, was humbled by a car and a mechanic's dedication. The mechanic explained more about the engine, how every part had been hand-tuned, how the car could still run smoothly despite years of neglect by the world. "It's not magic," he said. "It's work, care, and understanding. That's what makes it live." The CEO nodded, thinking about his own life, his own work, and how often he judged value by surface or reputation. Here was a car that seemed worthless, yet it held power, reliability, and beauty beyond measure. Here was a man who had kept it alive, honoring someone's legacy. He stayed longer than he planned. He asked questions, touched parts, and even took a small test drive around the lot. The Mustang responded perfectly. It was smooth, fast, and strong. Every turn, every shift, every sound told him a story of dedication, patience, and love. When he returned, he stepped out, almost in awe. "I can't believe it," he said. "I've never seen anything like this." The mechanic smiled faintly. "It's not about believing. It's about seeing. You see it now, don't you?" The CEO nodded slowly. He had been humbled, amazed, and changed. He realized that judging by appearances could be a mistake, and that some things held value far beyond what anyone could measure with money or status. The Mustang sat quietly again, as if proud of its performance. It had shown the world it was alive, it was powerful, and it was worthy of respect. The CEO, for the first time, felt small in comparison to the dedication and love that had gone into keeping it alive. He left that day with more than just a memory of a car. He carried a lesson about patience, value, and care. He carried respect for a man who refused to give up on something he loved. And he carried the sound of an engine that roared louder than doubt, louder than judgment, louder than assumptions. The Mustang had spoken. Everyone who had heard it understood something important. Appearances could lie. History and care could create power. Sometimes the most ordinary things held extraordinary life inside them. As the sun set over the quiet town, the Mustang rested again, waiting. It had proven itself once, but its story was far from over. The mechanic walked away, proud but humble. Knowing that the day had brought understanding to someone who had never known it before, the CEO drove back to the city. Thinking about the Mustang, about the mechanic, and about his own assumptions. He knew he would return. He knew he had more to learn. But that engine, that roar, that life fit would stay with him forever. And behind the shop, the Mustang waited patiently, ready to show the world even more of its story when the time came. The next morning, the small town woke slowly, but behind the repair shop, there was already activity. The old Mustang sat in its usual spot, yet it no longer seemed abandoned. It had proved itself yesterday, roaring to life in a way that left everyone in awe. The mechanic worked carefully, checking the engine, adjusting small parts, and making sure everything was perfect. The car was more than just metal. It carried memory, history, and love, and he treated it as such. The CEO returned early, parked his sleek black car, and walked toward the shop. He had spent the night thinking about the Mustang, replaying the roar of the engine over and over in his mind. For the first time in years, he felt humble. He realized that he had judged too quickly, that his experience in boardrooms and showrooms did not prepare him to understand the value of something cared for with dedication and heart. The mechanic greeted him quietly. "Back so soon?" he asked. "I need to understand it," the CEO said. "I need to know what makes it so remarkable. Yesterday was surprising, but I want to know the story behind it." The mechanic nodded. He had expected this. Few people could hear the Mustang's voice and not want to know more. "Then you should listen," he said. He led the CEO inside the small shop, past rows of tools, shelves of spare parts, and photographs of old cars. He picked up an old notebook and opened it carefully. The pages were yellowed, filled with handwriting, sketches of engines, and diagrams for parts that were no longer made. "This was my father's notebook," the mechanic said softly. "He spent years learning, building, and recording everything. This car," he nodded, toward the Mustang, "was his masterpiece. Every line here is part of it." The CEO leaned in, fascinated. He had seen blueprints before, patents, technical drawings, but this notebook felt alive. Each page reflected patience, love, and attention to detail. It was more than work. It was devotion. "He taught me everything I know about engines, but also about respect," the mechanic continued. "Respect for what you build, for what you touch, for what you care about." The Mustang was never just a car. It was a challenge, a teacher, and a companion. My father built it to last, to test patience and skill. When he passed away, It became my responsibility to honor that. The CEO nodded slowly. He realized that his assumptions had been shallow. He had thought of cars as machines, not as legacies. He had thought value came from price tags and appearances, not from care and history. The mechanic led him back outside. Yesterday, you heard it start. You felt its power. But there is more than power. There is precision, reliability, and understanding. Every part has a purpose. Every adjustment is intentional. My father spent decades learning what most engineers never notice. I have maintained it as he taught me. That is why it runs so smoothly despite its age. The CEO crouched down to look closer at the engine. He noticed the small marks, the careful welds, the hand-fitted parts. It's incredible, he said. I've never seen attention to detail like this. Most people wouldn't even care to notice. That's the point, the mechanic said. Most people don't notice. They judge by appearance, by first glance, by what's easy to see. The Mustang was never about being easy to understand. It was about patience, care, and love. You only see it now because you were willing to watch, to listen, to believe it could be more than it looked. The CEO stood quietly. He had spent his life believing he understood value, success, and judgment. Yet here was a car, old, dusty, and ignored, that taught him more about respect and care than any boardroom ever had. The mechanic continued. When my father built this car, he had no idea it would last as long as it has. He was building it for the joy of the work, for the challenge, for the lessons it could teach. I have continued that work, not for money, not for fame, but to honor him and the lessons he left behind. Every start, every drive, every adjustment is a tribute. The CEO listened carefully. He realized that this was not just about a car. It was about dedication, love, and legacy. It was about understanding that value is not always obvious, and that true work, the kind done with heart, cannot be measured by appearances alone. Yesterday, I underestimated it, the CEO said quietly. I thought it was junk. I thought it was worthless. But it's more alive than most new cars I've seen. I didn't expect a machine to teach me something about life. The mechanic nodded. That's what it does. And it teaches more than that. It teaches patience, respect, and the importance of care. You can't rush these things. You can't fake them. They are earned through time and attention. The CEO walked around the Mustang, touching the hood lightly. The metal was cool but solid. The paint was faded but proud. The car seemed to hum with history. It's amazing that something like this exists, he said. That it can survive, run perfectly, and teach lessons I've never learned in a lifetime of experience. The mechanic smiled faintly. It exists because it was loved, and it survived because that love was maintained. My father built it, I preserved it, and now you see it. That's the story. The CEO's mind was full of questions, not about engines or mechanics, but about life. He thought about how often he had judged too quickly, how often he had discarded things, people, and opportunities because they did not look valuable on the surface. The Mustang was teaching him humility. It was showing him that real worth is deeper than appearances. Can I ask you something? The CEO said. Of course, the mechanic replied. Have you ever thought about selling it? About letting someone else take it, even for a lot of money? The mechanic shook his head. No, some things are priceless. This is not about money. This is about respect, legacy, and memory. This car is my connection to my father, to what he taught me, and to the lessons we can pass on. I can't put a price on that. The CEO nodded slowly. He had spent a lifetime measuring everything in money, deals, and profit. Here was a man who had found something far more valuable. He felt humbled, even a little ashamed, but also inspired. Your father would be proud of you, the CEO said softly. I can see that you've honored him in every detail. Most people would have sold it, left it to rot, or ignored it. You cared enough to keep it alive. The mechanic nodded, looking at the Mustang with quiet pride. It's not just about the car. It's about the lessons, the work, the love. That is why it matters. The CEO stood in silence, taking it all in. The Mustang had proven itself, not just in performance but in story, history, and heart. He realized that he had learned more about value, patience, and respect from this small car and its mechanic than he ever had in the world of business. Neighbors continued to watch from a distance, sensing something extraordinary. They had seen the CEO humbled, amazed, and curious, and it made them reconsider what they thought they knew about the Mustang. It was no longer just an old car. It was a symbol of dedication, care, and love passed down through generations. The mechanic spoke again, quietly. Every start, every adjustment, every drive is a lesson. My father built this to last, not just in miles, but in meaning. That's what makes it alive. That's what makes it powerful. The CEO nodded, understanding fully now. He had been wrong, but he had also learned something rare, that true value is not always visible. That dedication and love can create strength where others see weakness, and that some things people, memories, machines carry life in ways that cannot be measured. He knew he had more to learn, but he also knew he had witnessed something extraordinary. The Mustang had spoken through its engine, through its history, and through the quiet dedication of the man who cared for it. It had taught lessons that no classroom or office could ever teach, and as the sun climbed higher over the town, the Mustang waited silently, proud of its history, alive with the care it had received, and ready to continue teaching those willing to see, listen, and understand. The morning sun painted the small town in soft golden light, casting long shadows across the quiet streets. Behind the small repair shop, the old Mustang sat in its usual place, ready for another day. It had already proven itself, roaring to life and surprising the CEO with its power, precision, and history. But today, something felt different. There was a sense of anticipation, as if the car knew its story was about to reach a new chapter. The CEO's black luxury car rolled slowly into the driveway. He stepped out, looking around at the quiet town and then at the Mustang. Yesterday had left a strong impression on him, but today he felt a deeper curiosity. He had learned a lot about the car, about the mechanic, about the lessons hidden in something most people would call junk. Yet he knew there was still more to understand. The mechanic was already outside, checking the Mustang carefully. He noticed the CEO approaching and nodded. "You're back," he said simply. "I want to know the rest," the CEO replied. "I want to understand everything's a story, the care, why it matters so much. Yesterday was impressive, but there's more, isn't there?" The mechanic smiled faintly. "There is always more. This car is not just about starting and running. It is about history, love, and dedication. If you are willing, I will show you." The CEO followed the mechanic inside the shop. The interior smelled of oil, leather, and the faint scent of gasolina combination that spoke of hard work and years of care. On the shelves, old parts, photographs, and hand-drawn sketches told the story of a lifetime devoted to cars. The mechanic picked up a photograph of a younger man with bright eyes, standing proudly beside a shiny Mustang. The CEO studied it, sensing the pride and love captured in the image. "That's my father," the mechanic said softly. "He built this car with his hands, piece by piece. He spent years learning, experimenting, and perfecting it. When he passed away, it became my responsibility to keep it alive. Not for fame or money, but for respect, for memory, for the lessons it carries." The CEO nodded slowly, feeling a strange warmth in his chest. He had spent his life chasing success, deals, and recognition, but here was something far more meaningful. A car, a memory, and a legacy had taught him lessons that no boardroom ever could. The mechanic led him back outside. "Yesterday you heard it roar. You felt its power. But it is more than that. Every part, every adjustment, every start is a story. This car survived because it was cared for, because it was loved, because someone refused to let it be discarded." The CEO leaned closer, examining the engine again. He could see the small marks, the hand-fitted parts, the careful repairs that had kept it alive. "It's incredible," he said. "I've seen countless engines, but I've never seen attention to detail like this. It's more than performance, it's art, history, and dedication all in one." The mechanic nodded. That's exactly it. My father built this car as a challenge, to teach patience and skill. I have continued that work, not for money or recognition, but to honor him and the lessons he left behind. Every start, every drive, every adjustment is a tribute. That is why it matters. The CEO stood quietly, thinking about his own life. He realized how often he had judged too quickly, discarded opportunities or people because they did not meet his expectations, and missed the value hidden beneath the surface. The Mustang was teaching him humility, patience, and respect. Can I ask something? The CEO said finally. Of course, the mechanic replied. Have you ever thought of selling it? Letting someone else take it, even for a lot of money? The mechanic shook his head. No. Some things are priceless. This car is a connection to my father, to what he taught me, and to the lessons it carries. I can't put a price on that. Selling it would be like discarding the memories, the effort, and the respect it represents. The CEO nodded slowly, understanding fully now. He had spent a lifetime measuring everything in money, deals, and profit. Here was a man who had found something far more valuable, something that could not be bought or sold. He felt humbled and inspired. I want to help, the CEO said suddenly. Not buy it, not take it away, but help. Your work deserves more recognition. Your skills, your care, your dedication, they deserve support. You shouldn't have to struggle while keeping this car alive. Mechanic looked surprised but did not interrupt. The CEO continued. I can invest in your shop, provide tools, parts, support. You can continue your work, preserve this car, and help others restore vehicles the way you've done. The Mustang can stay here, where it belongs, but you can grow your business and your skills can reach more people. The mechanic was silent for a moment, letting the words sink in. He had spent years working quietly, never asking for help, never seeking recognition. The idea of support, of investment, of someone believing in his work was almost too much to take in. Yet he saw the sincerity in the CEO's eyes. He nodded slowly. That would mean a lot, he said. The CEO smiled. You deserve it. And the Mustang deserves to be honored, not sold or forgotten. This is not just about cars. It's about legacy, dedication, and respect. I want to help you share that with the world. Neighbors and townspeople had gathered quietly, sensing something special was happening. They watched as the CEO and the mechanic spoke, realizing that the old Mustang had done more than prove its worth. It had changed the perspective of a powerful man, inspired support for a quiet worker, and reminded everyone that value is not always obvious. The mechanic led the CEO to the Mustang one more time. He opened the hood carefully, explaining the special parts, the careful tuning, and the lessons hidden in every piece. The CEO listened intently, asking questions, touching parts, and appreciating the precision and care. He could see why the Mustang ran so smoothly, why it had survived, why it had changed his understanding of value. Every adjustment tells a story, the mechanic said. Every start, every drive, every reparates, all part of a legacy. That's what makes it alive, what makes it powerful. It's not just an engine. It's history, memory, and love. The CEO nodded. I understand now. And I want to help make sure others understand too. Your work, your dedication, it's rare. It should be seen, appreciated, and supported. The mechanic smiled, a quiet, genuine smile. Then let's do it together. The Mustang stays here where it belongs. But the lessons it carries can reach more people. That's what matters, CEO agreed. They shook hands, a promise made without words. It was a promise to honor legacy, to support dedication, and to share lessons learned from an old car that had proven itself against doubt, neglect, and judgment. As the sun climbed higher, the Mustang sat quietly behind the shop, proud and patient. It had done more than roar to life. It had brought understanding, humility, and support. It had reminded everyone that appearances can deceive, that care and dedication create power beyond measure, and that some things memories, legacies are priceless. The CEO left the town with a new perspective. carrying the lessons of patience, respect, and humility with him. The mechanic returned to his work, proud but humble, knowing that the Mustang had done its job, not just running smoothly, but teaching the world about value, dedication, and love. The town returned to its quiet rhythm, but the story of the Mustang spread quietly, inspiring those who took the time to listen, watch, and understand. It was more than a car now. It was a symbol of what can happen when care, patience, and respect are given to something forgotten or overlooked. And behind the small repair shop, the Mustang waited, ready for the next start, the next lesson, and the next person willing to see beyond the surface. It had proven its worth, not just to a CEO or a town, but to anyone who believed in the power of dedication and love. The mechanic worked quietly, checking engines, tuning cars, and keeping the Mustang alive. The CEO returned often, not as a buyer, but as a partner and friend. Together, they began restoring other cars, teaching others the value of care, precision, and respect. The shop grew not just as a business, but as a place of learning, history, and inspiration. The Mustang remained in its spot behind the shop, proud, patient, and alive. It had proved that doubters wrong, inspired a powerful man, and reminded everyone that some things are priceless. Its story, its lessons, and its legacy would continue, carried forward by those who understood that true value is not always easy to see, but can change the world when it is recognized. And in the quiet town, behind the small repair shop, the Mustang waited, as it always had, ready to roar again, ready to teach again, and ready to remind everyone that love, care, and dedication can create something extraordinary even in the most unexpected places.